So today I'm doing a tag video. This is the ReRead Book Tag. I saw this on Vanessa's channel at Chbosky. I'll link her video in the description, as well as Juan's video. He is the creator of this tag. I will link his original video in the description. His channel is Just One Reader. This is relatively short, but I do have multiple answers for a couple of questions, or prompts. They're not really written as questions, more like prompts. So number 1 is a book from your childhood that you want to reread, and mine is The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. This was my favorite book when I was 11, and like in high school I thought about rereading it, and then I just didn't, and then years have gone by, clearly, and I still haven't reread it. It's been 12 years, and I'm basically just afraid that I'm going to pick it up, read it, and hate it, because I have these like expectations in my head because of how much I loved it when I was 11 years old. But I don't remember that much about it other than really loving it. I don't know. From what I can remember, and like some of these details might be inaccurate, but it's about Harvey, who goes into this house in his neighborhood that I picture as like the house in Edward Scissorhands, except instead of like at the end of the street on a mountain, basically, it's like in the middle of the neighborhood. I don't know, that's just the way I picture it. Like, so Harvey goes into this house, and basically he's free to do whatever he wants. There are other kids there. He doesn't have to go to school. He doesn't, therefore he doesn't have schoolwork or homework. He can play with the other kids, whatever a 10-year-old kid would do. So he's having the time of his life, and, there's a catch, though, and I do remember, like, the plot twist and, like, what happens at the end. There are just certain scenes that I remember other than that, but I don't really remember, like, what happens. 2 is a book you want to reread because you didn't like it the first time, and this one, like, the answers that I have for this kind of go along with another prompt, so I'm going to come back to this. And we're going to go to number 3, which is a book you want to reread because you read it a long time ago. And for this, I have 2 books, The House at Riverton and The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. These are my second favorite books, like they're tied for number 2. I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about them. I can't remember if I've talked about them before, but they are historical fiction, and there's a mystery involved in each one, and you really get to know the characters, so like I feel like if you went in just thinking that it's like a mystery, it may be kind of boring and you may be able to figure out what happens. So I would say like don't go into it just for the mystery, but yeah, these are my second favorite books, and it's been 7 years since I've read these. I do have a preference with The Forgotten Garden being my favorite over The House at Riverton, but I love both, and I love Kate Morton's writing. I don't know what else to say. I love these books. Number 4 is a book you wanted to reread because you didn't understand it the first time. Okay, so this one, I actually didn't even realize I didn't understand it until I saw the movie adaptation, and that's Atonement by Ian McEwan. Yeah, I didn't know, I'm not going to say anything, obviously, but I didn't know it ended a certain way. I didn't, like, understand the complete story until I watched the film adaptation and went, wait, that's what happened? Oh, okay. Like, I'm trying not to give away too much, like, emotion there, so that you don't know if you haven't read this. But I think it would be a lot better to actually read this and understand everything that was happening. This one's hard to talk about. And this one is about Bryony, who, I'm trying to be like really careful with the way I describe it, but Bryony is very imaginative, and she loves to write. So she writes a lot of plays and stories, and she notices something happening between her older sister Cecilia, and Robbie, who is like one of the groundskeeper's son, but he basically does all the groundskeeping. Oh, also it takes place during World War II. Yeah, and then something happens things happen. Things happen. Okay, and then going back to number 2, a book you want to reread because you didn't like it the first time, and combining it a little bit with number 5, which is a book that you like even more upon a second reading, or a book that will benefit from a second reading. So I do have like my own answers for like number 5 on its own, but none of the books that I didn't like I would like to reread. So I went with books that I thought were just okay and they would benefit from a second reading. So they could be answers to both questions, but I have like my own separate answers for number 5 like on its own. So this one will have a bit of an explanation for all these books here. The first one I have is Shadow Tag by Louise Erdrich. And I just read this like way too young. I don't even know what made me pick this up in the first place. I think I saw it in a magazine and thought the cover looked interesting. Like, I don't even know. But this is about a woman who is like married and has children, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, married and has children. And then she like keeps a diary, and she's also an alcoholic. And I just like couldn't relate to any of that. So this is something that you should read like as a true adult. And I think if I were to reread it, I would benefit from, actually being an adult, which I'm still like, I don't think of myself as a full adult yet. So this would be something that you should probably read when you're like in your 30s, I would say. So this one was, again, all of these are pretty much like okay, but this one I just was too young for. And then I also have Bonjour Tristesse by Françoise Sagan. And this one, I don't know, all these are just like solid 3 out of 5 stars. With this, I think getting to know the characters more would be really interesting, and analyzing the situation a bit more. It's one of those stories that I think once you know everything that happens, although the first time it can be, I think, surprising and shocking, the things that happen in this book in particular. I think knowing it ahead of time could also be like a good thing, because just then you know what you're getting into, and you can start looking at the other things of how the story is told, I guess, is what I'm saying. Instead of just like being along for the ride and seeing things unfold, you can just, get a little deeper. And sort of similar with what I just said about Bonjour Tristesse, I would say the same thing with Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan Lindsay. This is another one that I would like to look at the characters more and kind of be swept away by like the mood a bit more as well. And I think beforehand I knew part of the ending. And that's something that I never know if I should say it or not. Because like once you know, and you can't like take it back. But there's something about the book that if you know beforehand, you may know that it's like for you or not for you. Oh my god, this is so vague. I'm trying not to say too much. I realized that I didn't tell you what Bonjour Tristesse was about. So this one is about, oh my god, all these, Cecile. Cecile, she lives with her father, and it's always just been like the two of them for her entire life, and they both live like a bachelor's life basically until her father finds like a steady girlfriend, and that creates complications and conflict and certain feelings from Cecile. And then Picnic at Hanging Rock is about it takes place in like 1900. Yeah, it's Valentine's Day in 1900 in Australia, and the girls at a private boarding school, like go have a picnic at Hanging Rock, and 3 of them go missing, and 1 of the teachers goes missing. So in total, 4 people go missing, just like without a trace. That's what happens. And then A Single Man by Christopher Isherwood. Again, this is just another one that was like a solid 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it, but I didn't get much from it, and I think a second reading would help me to get more from it. All these books I don't really know if I would reread. I'm not much of a rereader, so yeah. And this one is about a professor whose lover dies? Boyfriend? I can't even, like, remember their exact... I guess I'm trying to put a label on it, but still. He dies, and it's just what happens, like, within that day. It's just the professor walking around the city, thinking and doing stuff. And then two books that are just books that I'd like more upon a second reading, and books that would also benefit from a second reading are We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This is a YA sort of mystery thriller. I don't really know if thriller's 100% accurate, but that's what I'm going with. This would make such a good movie. This has to be adapted. Where the heck is this adaptation? But I think everyone pretty much knows that there's a plot twist in this, but we try not to obviously speak of it unless you're doing some sort of spoilery review or discussion of it. And this would just be a good book to reread and pick up those clues that went over your head or didn't think were important, and it turned out to have some sort of indication of what's really happening. And I think this is one that I actually didn't know. Like, I didn't figure it out beforehand, but I also don't think I was really contemplating it a whole lot. I was just reading the book. And this is about a girl whose name I don't know off the top of my head. She goes back to the family island that they go to, like, every summer, and something happened last summer that kind of put a rift between her and her cousins. And maybe I shouldn't tell you what this one's about. I'm just not. Nope, not happening. But then the other book that I would like to reread is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This I would probably, what? This is my favorite book. I'm pretty sure I would love it even more upon rereading it, and I think I would also benefit from rereading it, because now that I feel like I've absorbed as much information as possible about Sylvia Plath. I've always related things that happen in Sylvia Plath's life to things that happened to Esther, and I've never read the book or thought about what happened to Esther and gone, okay, so this was inspired by, like, this event that happened in Sylvia's life. It's always been the other way around, because I read the book first, didn't know it was semi-autobiographical, and then learned that it was, and basically have just tried to learn as much about Sylvia Plath as possible, and I think I've basically hit a peak here. So of all the books here, this is the one that I would most likely actually reread. I do plan on rereading it at some point. I just don't know when. I'd rather be like feeling it a lot and not so much, hey, I should reread that, and then almost force myself to do it. And then the last prompt, number 6, is a book you will read for the rest of your life. And I guess I just have to go with the classic answer here and say the Harry Potter series, because that's actually something that I have reread. Not all the books, but I've reread 3 of the books before. And I'm not much of a rereader, so I don't know necessarily if there are other books. Even as much as I may love a book, I don't know how much I would actually reread it over and over and over again in my life. I'm just not much of a rereader. I just said that, didn't I? So I'd rather answer with something that I know has a higher reread value than something that I've only read once and just happen to love a lot. And that's the end of the tag. I didn't really think about who I would tag. If I think of any more people, I'll put it in the description, but I will tag Summer at Seasons Readings and Hannah at Hannah Tay. And as usual, I'm going to ask you a question that you can answer in a comment. Are you a rereader? Because I think I've said like 5 times that I'm really not a rereader, and I wish I was more of a rereader. I think that's what a lot of us say. But what's a book that you, like the number one book that you want to reread? Whether you really have the initiative to, or you're just really afraid to because you don't want to ruin a book that you love. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!